Welcome, guys. This is going to be a fun series. We have the greatest general in history, Alexander the Great. Alexander invades the Persian Empire is the title for this video, so that's probably what we're going to see here. Philip of Macedon, Philip II of Macedon being his father, conquered most of the Greek state, except for Sparta. I think the Spartans held their own, I guess, or they just met a deal. I'm not sure. Now, we will see the great area to the right of the Aegean Sea be conquered by Alexander. Let's get into it right away. Glad you're here with me. Lego.
In 334 BC, Alexander, king of Macedonia, began one of the greatest military campaigns in history against the superpower of the age, the Persian Empire. Just 20 years old, his brilliant and fearless leadership won him battle after battle. And in an astonishing 10-year campaign that took him to the edge of the known world, he carved out one of the largest empires ever known.
Pretty big. Especially for the known world. That's got to be like at least... I mean, there's tribes all over the place on this map in Africa, Europe, and Asia, but like in terms of the known world, this is basically it.
Few men have had such a massive impact on the course of history. To the Persians, he was Alexander the Accursed. But to the West, he was immortalized as Alexander the Great.
Here we go.
Ancient Greece. From around 500 BC, this rugged land was the scene of remarkable developments in art, philosophy, and warfare. Its two greatest city-states were Athens, a naval power where democracy, art, drama, and philosophy flourished, and Sparta, an austere, militaristic society famed for its formidable army.
Right, and I'm pretty sure the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens happens before this, right? Pretty sure. Right before 500.
In 480 BC, these two city-states had joined forces to fight an invasion by the mighty Persian Empire.
Right. Was this Xerxes?
At the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a small Greek force led by 300 Spartans held up the enormous Persian army for 3 days
Leonidas.
before they were finally encircled and killed. Then, in the Straits of Salamis, the Greek fleet defeated the Persian navy.
And there's a great movie, I'm not sure how factual it is, but it basically is, there's the movie 300, the actual movie 300, and then I think in like 2013 or 14, they came out with a sequel, and I forgot what it was called, but it was basically more about the naval side and the Athenians.
But they couldn't prevent the Persians burning the sacred temples of the Athenian Acropolis. The next year at Plataea, the Greeks won a decisive land battle against the Persians and forced them to abandon their invasion. The next 50 years were the golden age of classical Greece. But rising tension between Athens and Sparta and their allies eventually led to war, dragging the Greek world into decades of destructive fighting.
Yep.
Wars between the Greek city-states continued for almost a century, leaving them exhausted and vulnerable to a new rising power to the north.
Macedonia.
For centuries, sophisticated Greeks had viewed the mountainous kingdom of Macedonia as a backwater, Hicksville, barely Greek at all.
Wow.
But under King Philip II, Macedonia emerged as a formidable military force. His most famous...
This is literally so funny because we just watched the Austrian-Prussian War. So there is a parallel then of like Austria being like Athens and Thebes and, you know, all these like more sophisticated, well-established states. And then you have Prussia, you know, the little brother, the non, you know, they're not very formidable, but they're now more militarily formidable. So I feel like there's a parallel there.
This reform, the introduction of the sarissa, an 18-foot pike, twice the length of a normal Greek spear,
18
and
foot?
wielded by trained infantry.
Wait, he didn't say 18 foot.
Reform, the introduction of the sarissa, an 18-foot pike.
18. How do you hold that?
Pike, twice the length of a normal Greek spear, and wielded by trained infantry, fighting in close formation, known as a phalanx.
I do know what the phalanx is, yeah.
In 338 BC, at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip's army crushed the joint forces of Thebes and Athens. Through alliance and conquest, Philip had already gained control over most of his neighbours. Now, following this victory, he united all Greece in an alliance known as the Hellenic League, or League of Corinth, with Philip as hegemon, or supreme commander.
Okay.
Only Sparta stood aside.
Why?
Philip began to plan a great campaign, a pan-Hellenic or all-Greek war against the Persian Empire. Their old foe was now an ailing superpower, its great riches ripe for the taking. But on the eve of launching his war, Philip was assassinated by his own bodyguard.
What?
Victim of Macedonia's brutal court rivalries. He was succeeded by his 20-year-old son, Alexander, brilliant, restless, tutored by the great philosopher Aristotle, and already an experienced military commander.
Like, think about like when you're crafting a recipe of like, all right, we got to make a conqueror. Well, how do we do that? Well, father is Philip II of Macedon, who have conquered the entire Greek state, who has politicized the entire thing to create a conglomerate of Greek state to now launch a attack on Persia. Okay, great. But guess what? Alexander, he's been in the thick of it, it seems. It seems that he's already militarily capable. He has the best tutors. Aristotle. So his mind is rich. His body is militarily ready. He has all the resources he could have. He has the army. He has the back. He has the policies to put things into place. That is just a recipe for success right there.
Alexander inherited his father's grand plan to invade Persia. But first he had to secure his own position as king.
Oh yeah.
At home, he had potential rivals executed, then crushed rebellions in Illyria, Thessaly, and central Greece.
That's an easy way to get it over
He
with.
made a special example of Thebes,
What?
completely destroying the ancient city and selling its people into slavery.
Okay, so we kind of got a tyrant going on right here.
In the spring of 334 BC, now ready to launch his war against the Persian Empire, Alexander led his army across the Hellespont into Asia Minor. It was the start of one of the greatest military campaigns in history.
How many men we talking?
Alexander's army was about 40,000 strong.
We are pretty deep in history though, so 40,000 might be a lot.
Drawn from all parts of Greece. The infantry were commanded by the veteran Macedonian general Parmenion. In the front rank, 9,000 Macedonian phalangites, armed with the 18-foot sarissa.
Jeez, look at that. You gotta have a strong shoulder to carry that.
These were professional soldiers, well-trained and drilled, who formed up for battle in the phalanx, 16 ranks deep. This packed formation presented a solid wall of iron spear tips and was virtually unstoppable. But it was also difficult to maneuver and highly vulnerable to attacks on its flanks or rear.
Or arrows.
So 3,000 elite infantry, the hypaspists, or shield bearers, armed with shorter spears, guarded its flanks.
Not exactly a legion, but very much a little bit closer to like a Spartan, it looks like.
They were commanded by Parmenian's son, Nicanor.
Okay.
The second line of Alexander's army was made up of 7,000 Greek allies and 5,000 mercenaries, armed as hoplites.
Okay.
They took their name from the hoplon, their large round shield, and carried shorter 8-foot spears.
This is more like the original Spartans.
A hoplite phalanx was not as effective as the Macedonian phalangites, but still well armed and heavily armored for the time.
Jeez, that is a huge spear, guys. I did not know how big this freaking spear was.
The Agrianes were the army's elite skirmishers, expert javelin throwers from what's now southern Bulgaria. Other skirmishers from Thrace and Illyria were armed with javelins, slings, and bows.
Interesting. So we got 8,000, 17,000, 25,000, 28,000. We're still missing 12,000. Make sure I'm doing my math right. 18, 20, 29. No, we're only missing 8,000. Okay.
The shock troops of Alexander's army were the companion cavalry.
Okay.
1,800 elite horsemen, armed with spear and sword, commanded by Philotas, another son of Parmenion.
Now, I'm sorry, guys. I'm very, novice in some of these areas. When did cavalry become, like, common in military warfare?
Alexander led the royal squadron in person. There were also 1,800 cavalry from Thessaly, commanded by Callas, 600 from other parts of Greece, led by Erigyeus, and 900 mounted scouts from Thrace and Paeonia.
Scouts! That's huge. That's a lot of scouts. Information is so important.
Under Cassander.
Granicus.
The great Persian Empire was divided into provinces, called satrapies. Each satrapy was ruled by a governor, or satrap.
Makes sense.
Those in Asia Minor, now threatened by Alexander's invasion, met to discuss strategy. Memnon of Rhodes, a skilled Greek general in Persian service, urged them to avoid battle with Alexander. Instead, he advised them to use a scorched earth strategy, to burn villages and crops and withdraw to the interior. Alexander's army, he promised, would quickly starve. It was good advice, but the satraps were unwilling to lay waste to their own provinces without a fight.
Oh, okay.
So they decided to face Alexander's army at the river Granicus.
Oh, that's where they fought, okay.
The Persian army formed up behind the river, which was shallow but 60 feet wide with steep banks. Their front line was a wall of cavalry, about 10,000 horsemen from across the empire. Medes and Hyrcanians from modern Iran, Bactrians from Afghanistan, and Paphlagonians from Turkey's Black Sea coast. Behind, in reserve, were the infantry, several thousand Greek mercenaries, a common sight in Persian armies at this time.
So how does this work? Because you got Greek mercenaries, but you have a Greek versus Persia war. Weird, isn't it?
These men fought for Persian gold and were armed with the round shield and short spear of hoplites.
That's so crazy.
The Persians may have been unsure if they could trust these men in combat against fellow Greeks.
Yeah, they could defect easily.
And so placed them at the rear. Alexander, determined to attack and destroy this Persian force before it could retreat, raced to the Granicus with his best troops. On his left wing he posted Thessalian, Greek and Thracian cavalry under Parmenian's command. In the centre were the massed spears of the phalanx, its 6 divisions commanded by Perdiccas, Koinos, Amintas, Philip, Meleager and Crateros. On the right, Alexander himself with the companion cavalry under Philotas, as well as the elite hypaspists, the Agrianes javelin throwers, and the archers. Alexander, with 13,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry in all, was probably slightly outnumbered. But ignoring advice to wait until dawn to cross the river, he ordered an immediate assault. He sent a squadron of companion cavalry to ford the river, followed by a regiment of hypaspists and the Paeonian light cavalry. Alexander, calling on his men to show their courage, then led his right wing across the river.
Okay.
As they reached the middle of the river, the Greeks came under a hail of javelins, darts and arrows from the Persian line. Those that made it to the far bank were immediately charged by the Persian cavalry. Alexander was in the thick of the fighting.
Which you don't usually see, like, in terms of the next 2,000 years of warfare. You're more likely to see, like, a general stay behind the troops versus in the thick of it.
He attacked where the whole mass of their cavalry and leaders were stationed. Around him, a desperate conflict raged. Horses were jammed against horses, and men against men. The Macedonians striving to drive the Persians away from the riverbank. The Persians determined to prevent them crossing, and to push them back into the river.
This is madness.
Alexander's attack seemed reckless, but he was buying time for the rest of his army to cross the river, including the irresistible Macedonian phalanx.
I feel like that's the secret weapon.
Then, suddenly, Alexander was fighting for his life, charged by 2 Persian nobles. Roesaces rode up to Alexander and struck him on the head with his sword, breaking off a piece of his helmet. But the helmet broke the force of the blow, and Alexander struck him down with his lance. Then, from behind, Mithridates raised his sword against the king, but Black Clitus, son of Dropidas, anticipated his blow, struck his arm, and cut it off, sword and all.
Crazy.
Now the Greek army was across the river, and the Persian cavalry faced a wall of Macedonian spears.
No shot. They have no shot.
Most turned and fled.
It almost seems like a deterrent more than anything.
The speed and shock of Alexander's attack meant Persia's Greek mercenaries hadn't even had time to join the battle. Alexander, in a blood rage, or possibly regarding these Greeks as traitors, ignored their appeals for mercy. The mercenaries were surrounded on all sides and massacred.
I mean, you saw what he did to Thebes, guys. Like, this isn't very shocking. It will have order!
Alexander had won a great victory. Asia Minor now lay at his mercy. But the Persian Empire was still a land of immense wealth and power. Already, it was mobilizing its vast resources to face him. If Alexander was to conquer this empire and take his place in history, he'd next have to face Darius, King of Kings himself.
Darius?
Research and artwork.
He said Darius. Is it King Darius? I'm not sure. But anyway, guys, listen. Alexander and his army is the truth. The phalanx, that thing is formidable. Like, if you saw like 1,000, just 1,000, he had 9,000. But imagine you just seeing 1,000 of those. 18 foot, that's 3x the height of a man. Oh, wow. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. We got some more videos to watch together, and I know you know that. So make sure you stick around for the next few. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bye-bye.